this matrescence, say it again.
Matrescence, you had it right.
Matrescence, not matrascence. You know what's so funny? I spent all morning saying it said matrascence, Vanessa, because I thought that I was saying it wrong when I said matrescence. And I was like, it said, and anyway. So, but like the joy that exists in the world right now is that we now know these things, and there are people out there who know these things who are more easily accessible. Because like think about the 80s, right? Moms dealing with all this shit in the 80s, people dealing with all this shit in the 80s. There was really like not a lot of opportunity for you to be able to find your people that you could connect with or create community or any or find support or coaching. Now, if somebody is having trouble or somebody feels lonely or is feeling like their instincts are being challenged by society and they feel alone as a result, tell me a little bit about how a matrescence coach or a doula, like either one of them, because I know they're at different stages and they're for different things, but I would like to know a little bit about how the work that you do, how does that help new mothers or even mothers who are now like, and when I say new now, I mean like new in the, because like, actually, let me go back. You and I started talking about your kids. So your kids are close enough together to where you didn't finish your first cycle with your first kid before you had your set. And most parents they usually have their kids within 2 to 3 years. So that means that from the moment you conceived your first kid, or like you had your period and then you didn't have your period and then you conceived your first kid, right? To oh my God, did you ever have you even come out of your matrescence cycle yet? Have you come out of it at all?
So great question. So every time you add a child to your family, whether it's through physiological birth, C-section or adoption, however a child comes into your life, your matrescence cycle starts over again. And sometimes you're still in a cycle. And so now you're in 2 matrescence cycles because you're still mothering the older child. That other child didn't disappear. You're still mothering that child. Even if in the worst case scenario that something happens to that child and that child's not in your family anymore, not in your life, you are still a mother to that child and you still have to go through this cycle no matter what. So now we come back to that clock where you have years and you have more years leading to other years all in one. It does kind of restart, but at this point you also have a little bit of knowledge about what's gone through and you kind of remember. But traditionally speaking, we would have wise women within our village who would help guide us through this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when a baby is born, so is a mother. You're not born with, you are born with some minor motherly instincts, but you don't really understand it. You don't know what you're supposed to be doing. You don't know why you're feeling these things and how to make it work. I remember coming out of the hospital when my first was born, and this was after a 10-day NICU stay where I literally camped out in her NICU room for 10 days and didn't even shower. I literally had afterbirth still on me after 10 days because I was just traumatized by what had happened. And they said, okay, you guys are free to go. And I was like, what does that mean? Because I've heard nothing but alarms go off every 2 hours for the last 10 days. And I don't even feel human anymore. So like, how do we integrate mothers into mothering? How do we bring them along in this journey? Because they are changing. They are becoming those caterpillars into the cocoon and then the goo. And then they come out as a butterfly and they're like, okay, I have these wings, but how do I fly? Mm-hmm. Do we just let them jump off the ledge and trust that their wings are going to carry them? And then if they don't, they don't? Because that's not good for society, right? We should be a little bit more gentle with those butterflies and we should be giving them a more gentle breeze along the way to help them. And so that's where a matrescence coach comes in. And that it starts with a doula, preferably prenatally, that you build a relationship with this person so that they can build a bond together, so that the doula can help be the voice for the mother, the birthing person, while they are birthing, because it's hard to talk when you're in the moment. Mm-hmm. You go into an instinctual thing trying to make this baby come out of you. To advocate for you, to make sure that your decisions are being honored. And then a postpartum doula who can come and who can help you, get to know your newborn, because you guys are literally strangers to each other. It's a whole person and you've changed and they're a new person. You got to meet each other. You have to understand each other and get to know one another in order to become a good bonded dyad. And then every stage that baby goes through, the mother is also going through a new stage. They have to learn, just like the newborn has to learn. They have to learn how to feed the baby, how to change the baby, how to wash the baby. And then they have to learn how to let the baby start crawling. They have to learn how to eventually let that baby start walking. And then what do you do when they go to school? What do you do when they enter kindergarten? What do you do when they go to high school? Like, they start to drive and you're like, well, my baby's going to get in a car. Like there's a
My
lot of
sister's
things,
kid just started driving. And I'm like,
right?
what?
Yes. So like, how does that affect a mother as their baby grows? Because the mother is also growing at the same time. So that's where a matrescence coach comes in. They help to say, this is normal. And we are here to help you because we've been through it too. And we can learn this together. No matter what stage of motherhood you are in, human beings should have a village to support them. And that's what we used to have. Once upon a time, we did have that. And I'm not trying to romanticize, centuries ago when it was really hard to survive, because it was. I'm not trying to romanticize that, but I am trying to romanticize the village of people coming together for the common good to help support one another. And that's what we've kind of lost in our individual capitalist type society, where it is me first, my money, my family, my house, stay off my lawn.
It's okay. So I want to actually like talking about romanticizing this because like I think there's something actually really interesting here. I think it's easy to dismiss something like that as romanticizing, but let's remember that it was really hard to survive back then. And so in order to ensure maximum survival of the species and of your community, it was in everybody's best interest to make sure that the mother and the child were both healthy so the child can grow up into being a member of the community, right? Like and contributing and so on and so forth, right? So that everybody, because we're very community based at this point, right? And when I think back to how I grew up, so when I was growing up in Pakistan, my mom moved from Indiana. Well, they were in Texas at the time, and then she moved to Pakistan. And America was already well into this nuclear family space, so like that was fairly typical at this point. You weren't going to have multi-generational households, except maybe some specific cultures that still had that as part of their cultural framework. But moving to Pakistan, that was part of our cultural framework. So we moved into a house where my grandparents lived there, my aunts and uncles lived there. There were so many people. And then even though my mom was sick and my dad was always gone, there were always like, we kind of raised ourselves, but there were always people around to make sure we were taken care of and whatnot and so on and so forth. And I can see how it's almost as if you think about how like, and now I'm going to back into colonialism where I feel like it was I got to grow up watching how colonialism disrupted that environment, right? And how because it wasn't exactly the way my grandparents told me the stories about how they grew up, but it was like close enough. And then now obviously it's not like that at all because everybody's gone and they're living in their own, so now we're fully into the nuclear family space for my family. But so when I think back to that, where how collectively we supported the mothers and their children to help them. And so like now you think that 3 or 4 people had kids around the same time, the kids are all growing up together and like there's they're all learning and people can share the responsibility, like so now, the kids old enough to play or crawl, they're all crawling together. Oh wait, are you
Oh, no, 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 no. You don't know how close you are to something very pivotal. Sharing the responsibility with children that are of similar ages included nursing babies. It was completely normal, completely acceptable for one mother to give her infant to somebody else, either related or within their village, to nurse that baby for the mother so that the mother could take care of other children or take care of herself or go find food or whatever the case may be. It was 100% normal for us to share breastfeeding amongst our village. And
and
it was accepted.
and in this case it was okay because everybody was like there was love and a desire. It was not like the same activity of like having someone else breastfeed is not appropriate in one space where it's creating separation between mother and child, but is acceptable in another space where it's creating connection between mother and child, but also then mother and aunts and mother and like community members, because these are the people they're going to be with forever for the most part. Like everybody just grows and then has kids and so on. I feel like what you're describing in terms of a matrescence coach is, you said the wise woman and the old crone earlier. I feel like if you now we're coming full circle, is that we know that it's not that we're not going to change at this moment to being like, okay, let's go back into having like multi-generational family houses. Like that's not going to happen right now for almost anybody, right? So the question that one of my money mindset coaches taught me was, don't say this isn't going to work. ask the question, how can I make this work? Right. So if we know that that philosophy is something that is healthy and good, how do we make that work in this contemporary society as it is? So it sounds like a matrescence coach and a doula is a way for mothers to get that sense of community, that sense of support, that sense of almost like a mentorship, but it's like, I don't know that I want to call it mother mentorship, but you know what I mean, right? That kind of thing. I think you should call your business Old Crone Matrescence, by the way. I think it would be great. So is that sort of like what is it? Is it sort of like the matrescence coach and the doulas are making it so that we can take the best parts of what existed back then, or that we can, or the philosophies, and bring it into something that we can now change our current framework with? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And we have to be careful that we're not appropriating from other cultures, right? We want to make sure we're being mindful of that. We're not using things like calling it the mother tribe, or, we don't want to take rituals from other cultures with just for that sake. We want to use elements that we feel inspired by. We want to look back at our own histories, if possible, within our own, culture, if we can. Many white people are actually cultural orphans and don't really have a culture of their own, which makes it harder.
Mhm.
And we can co-create, not create for the mother, but co-create with the mother their own types of ritual. And rather than mentoring them and coaching them, we want to be guiding them through it,
Mhm.
and that's where
Okay.
the co-creation really comes in. We want to make sure that we're working with the mother, not for the mother. That's where it comes back to autonomy. I believe in autonomy for all women, or for all birthing people, because nobody knows your body like you. You are the one who is living in it. You are the one who lives in your life. And so to look for an external source to make your life better is not always the best possible way to do things. You can look externally for ideas, for inspiration, but then
Mhm.
you need to find a way to make it yours. So we, as matrescence coaches, we primarily talk about co-creation. We give you an outline, we give you a guide, we give you, a structure to say, like, here's an idea for you. Now you pick the elements that work best for you. And if none of these work for you, hopefully they will inspire you to create something different. And then we just let the mother, the birthing person, the person who needs to go through this journey, lead the way through their own journey, because there are no two mothers that are exactly the same. There are no two children that are exactly the same. There's no two human beings on this planet that are exactly the same. We all have to find our own journeys. But it's nicer if we have a friend to go along the path with us.
I love that you said we're not appropriating, because I think that's actually very common right now in our society, is like, oh, this looks like a cool Pakistani thing, or a cool Indian thing, or a cool this. I'm just going to grab it and do it. So we are not saying do that at all. Like, don't do that. Because for the truth is that it's actually really fun. I'm going to use a completely non sequitur example, but it's very similar to when I was doing business coaching actively. And I would often hear other people say, just do this, this, and this, and this, and you'll be successful, right? And do this action, do this action, do this action, and you'll be successful. And this is right before I became a business coach, because at that time I was like, okay, I'll do it. This, and this. Not working. This, and this. No, not working. And I'm like, okay, you know what? If it's not working for me, then this is not something that is like you just take the thing and you do it and it creates success. There's clearly a process that you have to go through. There's a lot of other things going on that clearly I don't know about, that are creating that success. So these actions aren't going to be it. And I think the same thing holds true for a lot of the appropriated practices, that these practices are deep and meaningful, and they have been created over generations in some case, where it's not just do the thing. There's a lot more involved with it. So like you said, using it as inspiration. So for example, for me, and I want to actually talk to you a little bit about this, because you're so knowledgeable in it. As I move more into my witchy woo self, I am very I feel turned off, not turned off. I feel turned off by doing, like, I read a lot of very intelligent things, and I learn a lot of it. Like, I learn a lot of the way that stuff was done in the past and other people do it. And this is how you write a spell. And this is how but for me, I need to sit and marinate on it for a little bit, and like really just learn, okay, this is how you do it. And then how can I absorb, like, now that I've learned this, what is coming out from within me as a practice, right? That I can do. So it's like, so that's sort of, I'm imagining what you're doing with matrescence is your matrescence is that one day I will get this matrescence, that you will give them the framework and say, okay, this is what we do, and then marinate on it a little bit, and then they really absorb it and give them the opportunity to like percolate through their system to where what comes out is coffee. You know, it's like, okay, it's not coffee grounds, because the coffee grounds are what went in there, which were great coffee grounds, but you need to turn it into coffee. And that percolation process has to happen so that it will have meaning for you. Otherwise, you're kind of just doing the thing.
Yeah, 100%. This is a great, this is fantastic, fantastic topic, about making things that are your own, right? So a great example is my Polish heritage. My grandfather was the first generation born in America. And so I'm not that far removed as an immigrant. One of our Polish traditions was borscht on Easter Sunday. And it's a sour broth. If you've never had it before, it's a very sour broth that you add to a bowl of kielbasa, and blessed. All the food is blessed. You have two different types of bread, wheat and rye, and then you have hard-boiled eggs and ham. And my grandfather would make the kielbasa himself, so we had smoked kielbasa and fresh kielbasa, both of them, and all the food would be blessed, like I said. And it was the Easter eggs that we had dyed for Easter. And it's this whole cultural, religious symbolism thing. But the broth is terrible unless you've been raised on it. And as a child, I hated it. I would eat the ham, I would eat the kielbasa, but I would not have the broth. I do not want it. No, thank you. And now as an adult, I miss it because my grandparents have gone and I never got that recipe from them. And it kind of comes back full circle where we have these things passed down to us, some things passed down to us. But at the same time, we need to also be creating things for ourselves. So I may not have liked that sour broth, but I would still participate in the way that I could that felt right for me. So I would have a little bit of ham and a little bit of kielbasa and maybe the white of the egg, not the yolk. And I'd put butter on the bread on the side, but I'd make it my own using the inspiration of the generations that came before me. And as far as a spiritual practice, this is also super duper important because ritual, the word ritual comes from spiritual, right? It literally SPIRITUL.
Holy shit.
AL, sorry.
I have no idea. None
Ritual,
whatsoever.
yes. Ritual comes from spiritual. And rituals don't always have to be spiritual, but usually they are. Things like you wake up in the morning. Let me be clear. They don't always have to be spiritual, but in a way they can be. Let me specify that way. They can be. So for example, I wake up in the morning. The first thing that I do is take a drink of water. That is a ritual, right? I do it every day. I wake up, I take a sip of water, and then I roll up and get out of bed. But I can turn that into a spiritual ritual by thinking about it as an intention. I am rehydrating myself after not drinking all night long. I need the water to be healthy. The water is good for me. I am making it a spiritual thing out of a ritual. So the intentions behind the things that we do are super duper duper important, more than the history behind them. Some people will find that history means more to them than others, and that they really want to be specific in the way that they do that because that's their intention. And it all comes back to that intention. So if you feel like you can create a spell in the way that fits you and your desires, that's going to have way more power to it than a spell that you read in a book from somebody else, because they wrote that for them, not for you and for your intentions.
I love that. I want to question for you. So how about, would you agree that then a routine becomes a ritual when you give it your intention? Because like it's part of your routine to drink the water, right? But it becomes a ritual when you give it the spiritual thing. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I think the words routine and ritual really mean the exact same thing. It's just a matter of semantics. Because and most people who are like not religious and not spiritual in any way, shape, or form don't want to think about these things that they do as being rituals, but they really are, because that's what is comforting to our bodies. It's the same thing. Whether you come home from work and then you take off your shoes and you sit down on the couch and you turn on the TV, that is a ritual. You do it every day. Therefore, it's more than just a routine. It's a ritual. You do it every day. And if you don't do it, you feel weird, right?
Yep.
It's a ritual. It's not always a spiritual ritual, but it's still a ritual, and it helps you feel good about yourself. So you can add the spirituality to your rituals, but you don't need to. It's still a ritual.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, I mean, I feel very judged right now that you don't think me turning on Star Trek is a spiritual ritual, but whatever.
It
We'll
can
just put
be.
that aside.
It can be. Intention is everything.
I'm just kidding. But I want to go back to the comfort part because I think that like my breakfast every morning, I do the same thing. I have the same breakfast every single time. And it is a ritual. Like, and I would call it a ritual because it's like I feel disconnected from myself if I don't do that. And like when I don't meditate or when I don't do the things that like, because these are intent, I set the intention of doing these things. These are all have a purpose of nourishing my body, right? Not necessarily food nourishment, but like emotional nourishment and physical. It's actually it's super interesting. I love this. And I don't know why I dove into ritual because we're actually moving into more of like you were talking earlier. I want to bounce further back. We were talking about ritual routine. Oh, you were talking about appropriate. We talked about appropriation. I just want to touch upon that, but then I wanted to go back to what you said earlier about matrascence creating these communities. So I just got an email from you. This is actually how we started our conversation. So I want to actually loop back around into that because you were talking about these rituals, routines, these conversations that you have with mothers where you give them sort of this is a way you can do it, and then they percolate it through their system. But we also talked about there being a community involvement. And one of the things that you were working on when we first started talking about when you first started moving into this space was you hosting circles for
Anybody who needs to express their feminine energy in whatever way that they feel for themselves. It's a matter of embracing and expressing their feminine energy. And everybody has feminine energy. Even the most masculine of men has feminine energy within their bodies, just like the most feminine of females has masculine energy within their bodies, because everybody is within a spectrum.
Okay, got it. Perfect. I love that. I wasn't sure exactly. I know you, so I know how it was supposed to be, but I didn't know how to say the words. Okay. So you have this space that you've created for people who want to get in touch with their feminine side. Can you tell me a little bit about why that's so important to you?
So it's not just about the feminine. But that is a big part of it because we do live in a patriarchal society where feminine energy is usually suppressed in many different ways. We see that with women giving birth, for example. We also see that with women breastfeeding, how you're supposed to cover up and you're supposed to hide it and you're not supposed to talk about it. We also see that in that women need to be sexual objects instead of real people with thoughts and feelings. There's a whole range.
Sorry, we both
As
need
far
a
as that
minute
goes.
to laugh about that.
Yeah, we use a whole range there, right? But so these circles it really comes down to holding space for somebody without the need to offer feedback right away to fix the problem. The urge to jump in and fix the problem really comes from a masculine place. It comes from this patriarchal place that we've all been raised in, because if you have a problem, here's how to solve it. If you don't feel good, here's a pill to fix it. If you don't think that your due date is going to be convenient, well, we'll just schedule a C-section for you and it'll be fine. And so it all comes down to this, here's a quick solution, rather than actually solving the problem. Because really, any problem needs to be solved within that person. And even when coaching is done within the best of intentions, Vanessa.
This is why I
the,
don't coach as much anymore because
the
I had
best of
fundamental
intentions.
issues with this.
Yes, no, the best of intentions, because you really do want to fix the problem. My husband, when I tell him like the laundry needs to get done, he'll jump in and he'll start washing the clothes or start folding or whatever. He has the best of intentions, but what I really meant was I need a minute so that I can put my own clothes away. That's what I meant when I said the laundry needs to get done. But he didn't see that problem. He offered a solution right away, even though it wasn't the right one. Yeah. So what these circles are meant to do is to create a space for people to solve their own problems, to be witnessed. It's called holding space. And it also comes down to rites of passage. So connecting back to what we were talking about, appropriating traditions and things like that, and finding our own traditions, co-creating our own traditions and our own ways of along our journey, it comes back to the human need for a rite of passage. Like we think about bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. within the Jewish community.
Quinceañeras.
Yes, when a child comes of a certain age, they go through a rite of passage to say, now you are an adult. When somebody gets married, we hold a wedding ceremony, right? And a whole big reception. That's a rite of passage into furthering adulthood. You buy a house, you throw a housewarming party. That's a rite of passage. We as human beings always create rites of passages for any monumental shift within our lives, except motherhood. We might hold a baby shower for the first baby, but then what? And once the baby's here, you do a little meet and greet, maybe, but there's like, that's it. There's no real rite of passage. So it comes back to having a rite of passage and being witnessed within that rite of passage through this transformation that you're making. So these circles are more of a casual way of doing that, because there are minor things that happen within our lives. It's not always the birth of a baby and the buying of a house and a, big thing. But you know what? I did the laundry every day this week so that we're not overloaded in laundry. That feels good, and I need to be witnessed on that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can have a community of people who are like, I get that feeling. Wow.
I do, by the way. I'm like, I get that. You must feel so good right now.
Yeah. But then at the same time, it's like, I'm feeling overwhelmed by all the things that I need to do as a mother, as a woman, to carry the mental load of the holidays. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have to do this spirit week for my kids, and every day is a different theme. And we're supposed to have a snowpocalypse tomorrow. And I have to make macaroni and cheese for both my kids' school and for Christmas dinner with the family. And I've got to clean my house, and I got to do this. And whoo, I'm feeling it. I need a group of people to say, you know what? I see you. I feel you. And I'm here to listen to you. Rather than immediately offer a suggestion or offer a solution to that problem, just hear me out and let me vent it sometimes, because I need to figure out how to make it all happen. You're not really going to make it happen for me. I need to find a way to do it. But I want somebody to hold me and to tell me that it's going to be okay, that we're going to find a way through it. So that's what these circles are for, is to not offer advice immediately, but if you really need it, you can ask for it. Mm-hmm. But to just witness somebody and to hold them in that space and to allow them to be themselves, because you can't in the real world, unfortunately.
So I two things. One is that this is such a problem of fixing. I actually, we do a book club together, and after book club this week, we literally read a chapter from Laziness Does Not Exist, saying stop solving other people's problems, right? That's the chapter. After we were done, I painted, and all I could think about was the irony of that entire chapter, because immediately after that chapter, we were talking, somebody says they have a problem of some kind, and I immediately tried to solve it. And I didn't realize I had done it until later on. And then as I was thinking about it, I said, wow, it's so insidiously built into us that problem, you have to solve it right away. Whereas I feel like not all problems need to be solved. I actually, the other day, I said I was having problems with something, and Alex immediately started solving it. And I said this a little bit more harshly than I needed to, but I was like, I don't need you to solve my problem for me. I was like, I'm just saying it. I can solve it. And I was like, I'm sorry that I said it like that, but really, I don't need a solution. And I think that so would you recommend, because not everybody lives near you, not everybody is going to be able to attend your circles. I mean, we're going to put the links to to everything that you have there, but why do you think I did this podcast, Christie?
Oh, I knew exactly what you were getting at. I just have to finish my structural ends up here.
But seriously, folks, I will put all the content, but what I actually want to say is that for mothers or people who are feeling this way anywhere, is this something that you would recommend for them? For what would you recommend what steps would you recommend that they take? Because if someone's listening right now and they're like, oh my God, Christie, everything you're saying resonates so much with me. I'm a new mother, or I'm 3 years in, and I feel like I don't, and I feel like I'm still learning, like you were saying, because you're still in the cycle, right? But if you listen to society, why are you still feeling this way? You've been a mom for 3 years, right? And so you feel like you're wrong. So if somebody is feeling that way and they're looking for community, or they're looking for a way, what would you recommend that their steps be right now?
Well, you got to have a support system of some sort. And if you don't, you need to reach out. And sometimes that might be your best friend. Sometimes that might be your mom or your aunt or whoever you have in your life. Depending on your own personal situation. Like, my mom lives 6.5 hours away. She's not an option to me. My mother-in-law is an option to me. Maybe not, we're not super duper close, but there are small things that she could help me with that other people can't. Um, you can reach out to a therapist. Of course, therapy
Can
is always
you
an option.
so we've just had like the most powerful conversation. Like I didn't expect it to be so long actually. So I appreciate you sticking around so that we could turn it into like two, but it was just so like, oh my God, this is we got on a roll there. But I know that there are like cuz my entire audience is mostly going to be is mostly parents. I've historically typically it's very strange. I don't have children, but I typically tend to attract a lot of mothers. And so but and I know that many of them struggle with what we're talking about right now. So if someone is in this space where they're like, oh my God, Christy, this is what I've been looking for, but maybe they're looking for more research, or right now, like maybe they're not quite ready to work with you yet. We're going to come to that question in a second. But what would you recommend that where would you recommend that they go? What would you recommend that they research online to sort of like help get them familiar with this idea that they may not be wrong, that everyone else may be wrong?
That's, yeah, that's exactly it. So I think I started off searching motherhood coaching because that's the world that we live in. Everybody gets coached, right?
Yeah.
You hire a life coach, you hire a business coach, you hire somebody to coach you through this, somebody to tell you what to do. And through that is where I discovered matrascence. And I was like, ooh, what's that fancy word? And it turns out matrascence was developed, the idea of matrascence, the theory of it was developed by Aurelie Athen, PhD,
Mhm.
in, I believe, in New Zealand. She's the founder of the idea of matrescence, and she had a TED talk and it was amazing, and I watched it and I was like, oh, mind blown, this is exactly it. She's telling me that my instincts are right and the world is telling me that I'm wrong, and now how do I reconcile these two things?
Mhm.
And so I worked really, really hard at becoming a matrescence coach. And I talked to the experts and I've read all the papers and I've consumed all the books. And I'm currently putting together a website where I'll be in a community where I'll be able to help other mothers who are going through this. Um, and I've also been working really hard at becoming a certified lactation counselor so that I can help people who have those newborn babies, as well as becoming a doula so that I can help people through the pregnancy period, prenatal period, that's the word I'm looking for, prenatal, through birth itself, as well as the postpartum period, and then beyond into motherhood. So all things motherhood.
Honestly, I don't know if you could tell. I don't know if you can tell when I tear up, but you definitely made me tear up in that because when I think about what a gift you are to the world, right? This is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast is because I've known Christy for a long time. Like Christy and I have been friends for years. She's managed my communities when I ran them, and it's because she's so. I'm not gonna. She feel like you're not even here. She's so. You're so caring and like you're so mature. Like that's the feeling I've always gotten from you. Like one of the things about my mom, who I'll be really honest, like she died when I was younger. I was in my 20s, so I'm like not super young, but young enough to where, I was still annoyed by her. Sorry, it is what it is, but she
Teenage
loved being a
brain.
mom. Huh? Teenage brain.
Teenage
Oh yeah,
brain.
absolutely. I wish she was alive now. I mean, I know that she knows because we're in connection, but like I wish I could just say it to her, give her that satisfaction of being like, you were right about everything. Like you were, but you know what? I just said it to you, so that's enough. But like you, because I've never met someone who loves being a mother like you do. And I feel like that's something, and how much you care about like your caring is so it's like a wave, but it's a soft wave. It's a gentle wave. And I've always felt that coming off of you. Every time, even when the email that I got from you yesterday, I felt your spiritual wave coming over me, right? And I felt comfortable trusting my community in your care, right? And I think that's what's so important. And that's why I tear up is because I can't think of anyone more appropriate, more gentle, more, to help guide anyone who has had a child into this new space in a way that's like affirming, where it's affirming and it's empowering instead of feeling lonely and disempowering and like and confusing and scary, right? And I feel like that's really what you offer. You're almost like you're the old crone who sits at the end of the street, the wise woman that they go to when they're like, I want to feel like I want to really trust in myself, and being in your presence makes me do that. So that is like super exciting. So we'll put your links in the show notes, but go to manessa.com to get all of the information on this particular podcast. You will have links to Christy. There'll be links for you to connect with her and get a vision call or book a time with her if you wanted to just jump right into it. Anything, Christie, that you wanted to, I'm so grateful you were here today. Is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with?
Well, it's been amazing. You're my very good friend here, and I'm so glad that you had me on. Um, I want to finish by saying, I didn't, I was not blessed enough to wake up one day and just say like, "Hey, I want to do this for other people." This came from a place of pain within myself. This came from my own personal journey that I had to go through these struggles first. And it was because I went through those struggles that I recognized how awful they really were, and how other people out there are also going through these things. And so I want to make sure that people know that, if it happened to me, I know it happened to other people, and I want people to know they're not alone, and that it doesn't have to be like that again. You may have gone through a hard time, but maybe the next time can be better. Maybe we can make the future brighter. Maybe we can, save our daughters from having to go through it in the next generation. Um, so that's why we need to have, we need to bring this little village back in whatever way we can, that we can support mothers who can mother others, the act of mothering. And that's how we create social change, is through mothering our communities. So you can find me at christiedonn.com. And also modernmothergoddess.com. I own both domains, and they all go to the same place.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, dude. You're so good.